3 dances. That's all it took for Elena Romano to realize she had been wrong about everything. 3 dances with the man she had spent 2 years hating. The man whose very presence made her blood boil. The man who now held her so close she could feel his heartbeat against her chest. And when his hand settled on her waist during that 3rd dance, when his breath whispered across her neck, and he said her name like a prayer he'd been holding back for years, Elena understood with devastating clarity that hatred had never been what made her pulse race whenever he walked into a room. If you want to discover how a forced wedding dance transformed enemies into something far more dangerous, subscribe now. Leave a like if you believe the line between love and hate is thinner than we dare to admit, and tell me in the comments what's the longest you've ever been wrong about someone. Your presence here means everything. The charity gala sparkled with the kind of manufactured elegance that only old money could buy. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across marble floors, and the string quartet played Vivaldi with mechanical perfection. Women in gowns that cost more than most people's yearly salary glided past men in custom tuxedos, all of them wearing the same practiced smile, the same carefully constructed mask of sophistication. Elena stood at the edge of the ballroom, her emerald silk dress clinging to her curves in a way that made her feel simultaneously powerful and exposed. At 29, she had learned to navigate these events with practiced ease. Smile, nod, make small talk about nothing, and above all, maintain the image. The perfect daughter of the Romano pharmaceutical empire, poised and untouchable. Except tonight, she felt anything but untouchable. Because across the room, leaning against the bar with that infuriating half-smile playing on his lips, stood Dante Ferrara, the man who had stolen her promotion. The man who had humiliated her in front of the entire board. The man who, for 2 years, had made her professional life a living hell with his arrogance, his smugness, his absolute certainty that he was better than everyone else in the room. And he probably was. Which only made Elena hate him more. Dante Ferrara at 34 was the kind of man who made other men uncomfortable and women forget their own names. Tall, with dark hair that was always slightly too long to be properly professional, sharp Italian features that belonged on a Renaissance sculpture, and dark eyes that seemed to see through every carefully constructed defense. He ran the European division of Romano Pharmaceuticals with ruthless efficiency, turning failing departments into profit centers with moves so bold they bordered on reckless. The board loved him. Elena's father loved him. Everyone loved Dante Ferrara. Everyone except Elena. Their eyes met across the ballroom, and something electric crackled in the air between them. His smile widened slightly, knowingly, as if he could read her thoughts, as if he knew exactly how much she despised him. Then he started walking toward her. Elena's heart began to pound, her hands clenching at her sides. Not now. Not tonight. She had successfully avoided being alone with him for 3 months, ever since the incident in the conference room where they had argued so viciously that security had been called. She turned away, pretending sudden interest in a painting on the wall, but she could feel him approaching, could sense him the way prey senses a predator. Running away, Romano? His voice was smooth, accented with just enough Italian to make it dangerous. That's new for you. Elena turned slowly, forcing her face into a mask of cool indifference. I'm not running, Ferrara. I'm strategically relocating to anywhere you're not. He was close now. Too close. Invading her personal space with the casual confidence of someone who had never been told no in his life. And yet somehow, we keep ending up in the same rooms. It's almost like fate, don't you think? It's called working for the same company. Don't romanticize it. Who said anything about romance? His eyes gleamed with amusement. I was thinking more along the lines of inevitability. Before Elena could formulate a cutting response, the music changed. The quartet shifted to a waltz, and suddenly her father was at the microphone, his voice booming across the ballroom. Ladies and gentlemen, as many of you know, Tonight we celebrate not just the 20th anniversary of our Children's Medical Research Foundation, but also the merger of our European and American divisions. No. 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 Elena's stomach dropped. To symbolize this union, her father continued, his eyes finding her across the room with an expression that brooked no argument. I'd like to invite my daughter Elena and our European director Dante Ferrara to share the first dance. The ballroom erupted in polite applause. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. This couldn't be happening. Her father knew. He knew exactly how she felt about Dante. This was a power play, a public forcing of cooperation that she couldn't refuse without causing a scene. Dante leaned in close, his breath warm against her ear. Looks like you're stuck with me, Cara. Try not to step on my feet. Try not to talk, Elena hissed back. And maybe we'll both survive this. He laughed, low and genuine, and offered his hand. Elena stared at it for a long moment. At those long fingers and broad palm, remembering every boardroom battle, every cutting comment, every moment of pure frustration this man had caused her. Then she placed her hand in his because she had no choice. His fingers closed around hers, warm and strong, and something shot up her arm that felt nothing like hatred. The walk to the center of the ballroom felt like a death march. Every eye in the room was on them. Elena could feel the speculation, the gossip already forming. The Ice Queen and the Italian Shark, forced to play nice for the cameras. Dante's other hand settled on her waist, and Elena's breath caught. Through the thin silk of her dress, she could feel the heat of his palm, the slight pressure of each finger. She placed her free hand on his shoulder, trying to maintain as much distance as possible, but he pulled her closer with effortless strength. Relax, he murmured, his mouth so close to her ear that his lips nearly brushed her skin. You're as stiff as a board. People will think you actually hate me. I do actually hate you, Elena shot back. But her voice came out breathier than she intended. Do you? His hand on her waist tightened fractionally. Is that what we're calling it? The music swelled, and they began to move. For the first few steps, Elena focused on the mechanics. 1, 2, 3. Don't trip. Don't look at him. Don't think about how perfectly her body seemed to fit against his, how easily he led, how her body followed his movements as if they'd done this 1,000 times before. You're a good dancer, Dante said after a moment. Don't sound so surprised. I'm not surprised. You're good at everything you do. It's one of the most infuriating things about you. Elena looked up sharply, caught off guard by the honesty in his tone. His dark eyes were fixed on her face with an intensity that made her knees weak. You find my competence infuriating? I find your existence infuriating, Elena replied, but the words lacked their usual venom. The feeling is mutual. Believe me. But the way he was looking at her, the way his thumb had started tracing small circles on her waist, contradicted his words entirely. They turned, and Elena became aware of how close they were now. Her breasts pressed against his chest. His thigh brushed between hers with each step. The scent of his cologne, something dark and expensive with notes of bergamot and cedar, surrounded her completely. Why do you hate me so much? The question came out of nowhere, and Elena blinked. Are you serious right now? Completely. You stole my promotion. You undermined me in front of the board. You've spent 2 years making my life miserable. I earned that promotion, Dante said, his voice dropping lower. Your father offered it to me because I turned a failing division profitable in 6 months. As for undermining you, that's called disagreeing with bad strategy. My strategies were not bad. They were conservative to the point of cowardice. His hand slid slightly higher on her back, and Elena felt heat bloom across her skin. You play it safe, Elena. You always have. It's why you'll never be more than your father's pretty figurehead. The words should have stung. Should have made her angry enough to pull away, to slap him, to cause exactly the scene she'd been trying to avoid. Instead, Elena found herself pressing closer, her voice deadly quiet. And you're reckless. You take insane risks that could destroy everything my family built. But they haven't, have they? He spun her suddenly, and Elena gasped as the room tilted. When he pulled her back, they were even closer than before, barely an inch of space between their bodies. Every risk I've taken has paid off. Every bold move has succeeded. Maybe that's what really bothers you. That I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. You're terrified, Dante interrupted, and now his mouth was so close to hers that Elena could feel the words against her lips. Of failure, of losing control, of wanting something you think you shouldn't have. Elena's heart was racing so fast she thought it might burst from her chest. The ballroom had faded away. The music was just distant noise. All she could see, all she could feel, was Dante. His hand burning through her dress, his body moving against hers. His eyes dark with something that looked nothing like hatred. You don't know anything about what I want, she whispered. Don't I? His thumb traced her spine, and Elena shivered. Then why is your pulse racing? Why are you breathing like you've just run a marathon? Why are you looking at my mouth like you want to kiss me or kill me and you're not sure which? But she had no answer. Because he was right. God help her. He was right. The dance continued. And with each step, each turn, each moment of contact, Elena felt something inside her shifting. 2 years of carefully constructed hatred beginning to crack, revealing something underneath that was far more dangerous. She became acutely aware of every place their bodies touched. His hand on her back, fingers splayed possessively. Her hand on his shoulder, feeling the flecks of muscle beneath expensive fabric. Their clasped hands, his thumb now stroking the inside of her wrist in a way that sent electricity straight to her core. I've thought about you, Dante said suddenly, his voice rough. Every single day for 2 years. I've thought about that fire in your eyes when you argue with me. The way you bite your lip when you're thinking. How you look when you're angry. All flushed and passionate and absolutely magnificent. Elena's breath caught. Dante, I've thought about what it would be like to make you forget how to be controlled. To make you lose that perfect composure. To see what you look like when you finally let go. Stop, Elena managed, but it came out like a plea, not a command. Why? Because you don't want to hear it? Or because you do? The music was building to a crescendo. Dante pulled her into a spin, then back against his body so firmly that Elena could feel every hard plane of him. Could feel exactly how much this dance was affecting him. I hate that I can't stop thinking about you, he continued, his voice low and intense. I hate that I take on projects I know you'll oppose just to see you fight. I hate that I've spent 2 years trying to make you notice me the only way I knew how. By being your enemy. Because at least that way, you couldn't ignore me. The confession hit Elena like a physical blow. Suddenly, 2 years of conflict took on a completely different meaning. The constant battles, the deliberate provocations, the way he always seemed to seek her out in crowded rooms. You're insane, Elena breathed, but her body betrayed her, melting further into his embrace. Probably, Dante agreed. But tell me you haven't felt it too. This thing between us. Tell me every argument didn't feel like foreplay. Tell me you don't go home after our fights feeling more alive than you have all day. Elena couldn't. She couldn't tell him any of that, because it would all be a lie. The music shifted to the final movement. Slower, more intimate, without conscious thought. Elena let her head rest against Dante's shoulder, just for a moment. Just to feel what it would be like to stop fighting. His arms tightened around her, and she heard his sharp intake of breath. Elena, he said her name like a man dying of thirst finding water. This is insane, she whispered against his neck. This is 2 years too late, he corrected. They swayed together, no longer really following the music, just moving in their own rhythm. Elena's mind was racing, trying to reconcile everything she thought she knew with this new reality unfolding in Dante's arms. Had she been wrong? Had she misread everything? The promotion that had felt like theft? Had that been jealousy masking as ambition? The arguments that had felt like attacks? Had those been desperate attempts at connection? The hatred that had consumed her for 2 years? Had that been something else entirely? I don't know how to do this, Elena admitted quietly. Do what? Stop hating you. Stop fighting. I don't know who we are without the anger. Dante pulled back just enough to look at her face, his hand coming up to cup her cheek with surprising gentleness. Then let's find out. Starting now. Starting tonight. People are watching, Elena said, but she didn't pull away from his touch. Let them watch. Let them see that the Ice Queen and the Italian Shark figured out they've been playing the wrong game all along. The song ended, and the ballroom erupted in applause. But neither of them moved. They stood in the center of the dance floor, wrapped in each other's arms, staring at each other as if seeing clearly for the first time. Elena's father approached, beaming with satisfaction that made Elena suspect this whole thing had been orchestrated. Beautiful, he said. Absolutely beautiful. You two make quite the pair. Dante's hand was still on Elena's face, his thumb stroking her cheekbone. Yes, he said, his eyes never leaving hers. We do. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Elena moved through the mandatory socializing, the small talk, the networking, but her mind was elsewhere, on the dance floor with Dante. In his arms, feeling things she had spent 2 years denying, she was acutely aware of him across the room, engaged in conversation with board members, his eyes finding hers again and again. Each glance felt like a physical touch, each small smile a secret promise. When the gala finally wound down and guests began to leave, Elena found herself on the balcony, needing air, needing space to think. The New York skyline glittered before her, 1,000 lights reflecting her own confusion. Running away again? Dante's voice came from behind her. Elena didn't turn. Thinking. Dangerous activity. He moved to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Want to share? I'm trying to figure out, Elena said slowly, how I could have been so completely wrong about someone. How I could have spent 2 years seeing one thing when the reality was something else entirely. You weren't wrong, Dante said quietly. I was an arrogant bastard who handled everything badly. I saw you, this brilliant, beautiful woman, and I wanted your attention, but I didn't know how to ask for it like a normal person. So I challenged you instead. Pushed your buttons. Made myself impossible to ignore. Why didn't you just ask me to dinner? Dante laughed, a real laugh that transformed his entire face. Would you have said yes? Elena considered. No, I would have thought you were mocking me. Exactly. So I took the path I knew. Competition. Conflict. At least in our fights I had your full attention. I had your passion even if it was anger. That seemed better than indifference. It wasn't better, Elena said. It was torture. Do you know how exhausting it is to hate someone that much? To wake up every morning bracing for battle? To go to bed every night replaying every cutting word, every moment of conflict? Yes, Dante said simply. I know exactly how exhausting it is. Because I was doing the same thing. They stood in silence for a moment, the night air cool against their skin. So what now? Elena finally asked. Dante turned to face her fully, his expression serious. Now, we start over. No more games. No more using work as an excuse to interact. I take you to dinner. We talk. We figure out who we are when we're not trying to destroy each other. That simple? That terrifying, Dante corrected. Because this is real, Elena. What I feel for you is real. And I think what you feel for me is real too, even if you've been calling it hatred to protect yourself. Elena's heart was pounding again. I don't do casual, Dante. I don't do brief affairs or messy complications. If we do this, if we try this, I need to know you're serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life." He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with such tenderness that Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "I want to know everything about you. Not just the boardroom warrior, but the woman underneath. I want to learn what makes you laugh, what makes you cry, what you dream about when you let your guard down." "I dream about being seen," Elena whispered. "Really seen. Not as the Romano princess or the perfect daughter or the ice queen. Just as me." "Then let me see you," Dante said. "Let me in. I promise I'll be careful with what you show me." Elena looked at him. Really looked at him, seeing past the arrogance she'd projected onto him, past the enemy she'd needed him to be. She saw a man who was lonely despite his success, who hid vulnerability behind bold moves and challenging behavior, who had spent 2 years trying to connect with her the only way he knew how. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Good," Dante said. "So am I. That's how I know this matters." He offered his hand, just as he had for the dance, but this time the meaning was different. This time it was a question, an invitation, a leap of faith. Elena stared at his hand for a long moment. 2 years of anger and frustration and misplaced emotion hung in the balance. 2 years of wasted time that could have been something else. Something more. She placed her hand in his. Dante's fingers closed around hers, and he smiled. A real smile that reached his eyes and transformed him into someone achingly beautiful. "There's a quiet wine bar 2 blocks from here," he said. "No one from the company goes there. We could talk. Really talk. Just you and me. No audience. No expectations." "Okay," Elena heard herself say. "Okay." They left the gala separately to avoid questions, but met on the street corner as planned. The night was cool, autumn just beginning to assert itself over the city. Dante had removed his bow tie and unbuttoned the top of his shirt, looking more relaxed than Elena had ever seen him. "You look different," she observed as they walked. "So do you. Less like you're planning my murder." "The night is young," Elena said, but she was smiling. The wine bar was intimate, all dark wood and candles with small booths that offered privacy. They settled into one in the back corner, and Dante ordered a bottle of Barolo without consulting the menu. "Presumptuous," Elena commented. "I've been studying you for 2 years," Dante said. "I know you drink red wine. I know you prefer Italian vintages. I know you choose quality over quantity every time. Am I wrong?" "No," Elena admitted. "But it's a little unnerving that you know that. I know a lot of things about you. I know you take your coffee black with 1 sugar. I know you tap your pen 3 times when you're thinking. I know you only wear your hair down on Fridays. I know the exact shade of green your eyes turn when you're truly angry versus when you're just annoyed." Elena felt her cheeks flush. "That's borderline stalking, Ferrara. That's what happens when you're obsessed with someone you're not supposed to want," Dante said bluntly. "You memorize details, you watch for patterns, you take what you can get, even if it's just knowing how she likes her coffee." The wine arrived, and Dante poured with practiced ease. Elena took a sip, letting the complex flavors settle on her tongue while she processed his words. "Tell me something real," she said finally. "Something I don't know. Something that's not about work." Dante considered, swirling his wine. "I'm lonely," he said quietly. "Despite all the success, all the money, all the beautiful women who throw themselves at me at these events, I'm profoundly lonely. I've been lonely since I moved to New York 5 years ago. Maybe even before that. I'm good at my job because I have nothing else. No family here. No real friends. Just work and an empty penthouse." The honesty of it hit Elena hard. "I didn't know that. How could you? We've spent 2 years having surface-level battles about business strategy. We've never talked about real things, about the fact that I call my mother in Milan every Sunday and lie about how happy I am, About how I sometimes stand in my apartment looking out at the city and wonder what the point of all this success is if there's no one to share it with. Dante, your turn, he said, cutting off her sympathy. Tell me something real. Something the Ice Queen doesn't want anyone to know. Elena took a long drink of wine, gathering courage. I'm terrified of becoming my mother, she said. She gave up everything for my father. Her career, her dreams, her entire identity. She became Mrs. Romano and disappeared. And I swore I'd never do that. I'd never let a man be more important than myself. So I built these walls, and I called it strength. But it's not strength, Dante said gently. It's protection. Same thing, isn't it? No. Strength is being vulnerable anyway, knowing you could get hurt, and choosing to open yourself up regardless. Protection is just fear with better marketing. Elena laughed despite herself. You're very wise for someone I've spent 2 years thinking was an arrogant idiot. I am an arrogant idiot, Dante said with a grin. But I'm also right about this. About us. We're both lonely people who have been fighting each other instead of fighting our loneliness together. They talked for hours. About childhoods and disappointments and dreams that felt too embarrassing to say out loud. About the pressure of family expectations and the weight of always having to perform. About what it felt like to be good at your job but empty everywhere else. Dante told her about growing up in Milan, about a father who wanted him to be a doctor, and the guilt he still carried over choosing business instead. About the woman he almost married who left him because she wanted the fantasy of him, not the reality. Elena told him about the loneliness of being the only child, the golden daughter who could never make a mistake. About the college boyfriend who wanted her last name more than her heart. About nights spent wondering if anyone would ever really see her, or if she'd always just be the Romano princess playing her part. I see you, Dante said when she finished. I've always seen you. That's why I couldn't leave you alone. The wine bottle was empty by the time they left, both of them slightly flushed and far more relaxed than they'd been in 2 years of knowing each other. The night air felt crisp and clean, and the city had that late-night quiet where anything seemed possible. I'll get you a cab, Dante said, raising his hand. I don't want to go home yet, Elena heard herself say. I don't want this night to end. Dante's hand dropped. He turned to look at her, his expression serious. Elena, if I take you back to my place right now, I'm not sure I'll be able to be a gentleman about it. Who asked you to be a gentleman? The words hung in the air between them, charged with possibility. Dante stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup her face. Are you sure? Because once we cross this line, there's no going back to hating each other. No more safe distance. No more pretending. I don't want to pretend anymore, Elena whispered. I want to know what it feels like when you're not my enemy. I was never your enemy, Dante said. I was always just a man who wanted you so badly he didn't know what to do with it except fight. He kissed her then, right there on a New York street corner at 2 a.m, and it was nothing like Elena had imagined. It wasn't angry or aggressive or a battle for dominance. It was achingly tender, almost reverent, as if he'd been waiting so long for this moment that he wanted to savor every second. His lips moved against hers with practiced skill but genuine emotion, one hand cradling her face while the other pulled her close. Elena melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, kissing him back with 2 years of pent-up frustration and denied attraction pouring out all at once. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against hers. Come home with me, he said. Please, let me show you who I really am. Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. They caught a cab, sitting close together in the back seat, hands intertwined, stealing kisses at red lights. Dante's penthouse was sleek and modern, all glass and steel with a view of the city that took Elena's breath away. But she barely noticed the expensive furniture or the art on the walls because Dante was kissing her again, walking her backward toward the bedroom with an urgency that made her heart race. "Wait," she said, pulling back. "I need you to know, I've never done this. Been this impulsive. I don't sleep with people I barely know." "You know me," Dante said, his hands framing her face. "You've known me for 2 years. You know exactly who I am, Elena. You just finally let yourself see it." He was right. She did know him, knew his tells when he was bluffing in negotiations. Knew the way his jaw tightened when he was fighting not to say something. Knew the exact shade of his eyes when he was truly angry versus when he was playing a game. She knew him better than she'd let herself admit. "I'm still scared," she confessed. "Then let's be scared together." He kissed her again, softer this time, and slowly, reverently, began to undress her. The emerald dress pooled at her feet, and Elena stood before him in nothing but lace and heels, vulnerable in a way she'd never been with anyone. Dante looked at her like she was a miracle, his hands trembling slightly as they traced her curves. "You're so beautiful," he whispered. "I've imagined this. God help me, I've imagined this so many times. But the reality is beyond anything I could have dreamed." Elena reached for his shirt, fumbling with buttons until he helped her, shrugging it off to reveal a body that made her mouth go dry. He was all lean muscle and olive skin, a canvas of masculine perfection that made her wonder how she'd spent 2 years not touching him. They tumbled onto the bed together, all tangled limbs and breathless kisses. Dante took his time, exploring every inch of her skin as if memorizing it, finding sensitive spots she didn't know existed. He whispered to her in Italian, words she didn't fully understand, but that made her shiver anyway. When he finally moved over her, settling between her thighs, he paused. "Tell me you want this. Tell me you want me." "I want you," Elena breathed. "I want this. I want everything." He entered her slowly, giving her time to adjust. His eyes locked on hers. The sensation was overwhelming, not just physically but emotionally. This was Dante, her enemy, her rival, the man she'd spent 2 years fighting. And now he was inside her, making love to her with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. They moved together, finding a rhythm that felt ancient and new all at once. Dante whispered her name like a prayer, his hands never stopping their exploration, making her feel worshipped and desired and absolutely cherished. When Elena finally shattered, crying out his name, Dante followed moments later, burying his face in her neck and holding her so tight she could barely breathe. They lay tangled together afterward, sweat cooling on their skin, hearts slowly returning to normal. Dante pulled her close, arranging her so her head rested on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her back. "Stay," he said quietly. "Not just tonight. Tomorrow. The day after. Stay with me and let's figure this out." "What about work?" Elena asked. "What about the board? The gossip? My father? We'll deal with it," Dante said. "Together. No more hiding. No more pretending we're enemies when we're something else entirely. What are we?" Elena whispered. Dante tilted her face up to kiss her. Soft and sweet. "We're two people who wasted 2 years being idiots. Let's not waste any more time." Elena woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the unfamiliar weight of an arm draped across her waist. For a moment, disoriented, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came flooding back. The gala, the dance, Dante's confession, the wine bar, this penthouse, his bed. She turned carefully, not wanting to wake him, and found herself face to face with Dante Ferrara, looking younger and more peaceful in sleep than she'd ever seen him. His dark hair was tousled, falling across his forehead, and without the armor of his usual intensity, he looked almost vulnerable. "I can feel you staring," he murmured without opening his eyes, a smile playing at his lips. I was just thinking, Elena said. Dangerous, Dante replied, echoing his words from the night before. He opened his eyes, and the warmth in them made Elena's heart skip. Good thoughts or planning my demise? Undecided, Elena teased. But she was smiling, and when Dante pulled her closer, she went willingly. They spent the morning in bed, not making love but talking, learning each other in ways they'd never allowed themselves before. Dante told her about his first job out of university, working 18-hour days to prove himself. Elena shared her fear of never being good enough, of always being measured against an impossible standard. I need to tell you something, Dante said eventually, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. About the promotion. The one you think I stole. Elena stiffened slightly. Do we have to talk about this now? Yes. Because I need you to understand. I didn't campaign for that position, Elena. I didn't undermine you or sabotage you or any of the things you've believed. Your father offered it to me, and I took it because I thought you weren't interested. You'd been so careful to maintain distance from the European division, and I assumed it was because you didn't want to be involved. I maintained distance because I knew if I showed too much interest, people would say I only got opportunities because of my last name, Elena said quietly. I was trying to prove myself on merit, and I was trying to prove I belonged despite being an outsider, Dante replied. We were both so busy protecting ourselves that we never actually talked to each other. We just made assumptions and built walls. Elena absorbed this, feeling another piece of her resentment crumble. I've wasted so much energy hating you. We both have, Dante agreed. But maybe we needed that time. Maybe we needed to fight each other before we could fight for each other. They eventually showered together, which led to more exploration and laughter and Elena discovering that Dante was ticklish on his ribs, a weakness he swore her to secrecy about. She borrowed one of his shirts, drowning in the expensive cotton that smelled like him, and they made breakfast together in his pristine kitchen. You cook? Elena asked, surprised to see him move confidently around the space. I'm Italian, Dante said with mock offense. Of course I cook. My mother would disown me if I didn't know my way around a kitchen. He made frittata with fresh herbs and perfectly crisp pancetta, and Elena watched him work, mesmerized by the casual competence. The way he moved like this was second nature. They ate on the balcony overlooking the city, and Elena felt something settle in her chest, a sense of rightness she hadn't known she was missing. What happens now? She asked eventually. We face reality. Work. Your father. The inevitable gossip. Dante set down his coffee cup, his expression serious. I want to do this right, Elena. No sneaking around. No hiding what this is. I want to take you to dinner publicly. I want people to know that we're together. The board will have opinions, Elena said. Let them, Dante replied. We're both excellent at our jobs. What we do in our personal lives is our business. Besides, your father will probably be thrilled. He's been trying to get me to settle down for years. My father, Elena said slowly, orchestrated that dance last night, didn't he? Dante's grin was answer enough. He called me 2 weeks ago. Said it was time we stopped being idiots and figured out what was really going on between us. I told him he was insane, that you hated me. He laughed and said that the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference, and you've never been indifferent to me. He's annoyingly perceptive, Elena muttered. He knew I was falling for you before I did. Were you? Falling for me? Dante asked quietly. Elena met his eyes. I think I started falling 2 years ago and just called it something else because it was safer. Because admitting I was attracted to you felt like weakness. Like losing. This isn't losing, Dante said, reaching across the table to take her hand. This is winning, Elena. We both win. They spent the weekend cocooned in Dante's penthouse, ordering food, watching movies, making love, and talking about everything they'd never said. Elena learned that Dante played piano, that he'd wanted to be an architect before business school, that he still got homesick from Milan but loved New York's energy. Dante learned that Elena wrote poetry she'd never shown anyone, that she volunteered at a women's shelter on weekends, that her favorite place in the world was a small beach in Maine where her grandmother used to take her. By Monday morning, when they had to face the office in reality, something fundamental had shifted. They weren't enemies anymore. They weren't even just lovers. They were partners, allies, two people who had found each other despite doing everything possible to stay apart. The office on Monday was everything Elena had feared, and somehow worse. She and Dante had agreed to arrive separately, to ease into the revelation rather than making a dramatic entrance, but the moment Elena stepped into the executive floor, she could feel the attention. Whispered conversations stopped when she passed. Curious glances followed her down the hallway. Someone had seen them leaving the gala together. Or entering Dante's building. Or maybe the security guard who'd seen her do the walk of shame on Sunday morning had loose lips. Elena kept her head high, refusing to show the anxiety churning in her stomach. She was Elena Romano. She didn't apologize for her choices. But when she reached her office and found her father waiting inside, that confidence wavered slightly. Dad. Elena. Roberto Romano was a silver-haired man with sharp eyes that missed nothing, and right now those eyes were fixed on his daughter with an expression somewhere between amusement and satisfaction. Good weekend? You knew, Elena said flatly. You orchestrated this. I facilitated, her father corrected. What happened after that dance was entirely between you and Dante. Though I must say, I'm pleased with how things developed. You had no right. I had every right, Roberto interrupted gently. I've watched you for 2 years, making yourself miserable, channeling all that passion into hatred because you were too scared to admit what you really felt. I've watched Dante do the same. Two brilliant people wasting energy on conflict when they could have been building something extraordinary together. This is my personal life. Elena protested, and I'm your father before I'm your boss, Roberto replied. I want you happy, mija. Truly happy, not just successful or accomplished, but fulfilled. And whether you want to admit it or not, Dante makes you come alive in a way I haven't seen since you were a child. Elena sank into her chair, the fight going out of her. I don't know how to do this. How to be with him and still be professional. How to separate work from personal when he's involved in both. You learn, Roberto said simply. You set boundaries. You communicate. You trust each other. The same skills that make a good business partnership make a good romantic one. Honesty, respect, shared goals. What if it doesn't work? What if we're only good at fighting, and when that's gone, there's nothing left? Then you'll know, her father said. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think you two have been playing out a courtship in the only way you knew how, and now that you've stopped pretending to be enemies, you're going to discover you're much better as allies. A knock on the door interrupted them, and Dante walked in, stopping short when he saw Roberto. Mr. Romano, I didn't realize you were here. Dante. Roberto stood, shaking the younger man's hand. I was just having a conversation with my daughter about professional boundaries and personal happiness. Dante's eyes met Elena's across the room, a silent question in them. She gave a tiny nod. Permission and reassurance rolled into one. Sir, I want you to know that my relationship with Elena won't impact my work or hers. We're both committed to... Stop. Roberto held up a hand. I don't need the professional speech. I need to know one thing. Are your intentions toward my daughter honorable? Dante didn't hesitate. Yes, sir. Completely. I care about Elena deeply. I have for a long time. And I intend to prove myself worthy of that trust, both professionally and personally. Roberto studied him for a long moment, then nodded, satisfied. Good, then I'll leave you two to figure out how to navigate this. Just try to keep the arguing to a minimum in board meetings. People are starting to take bets. He left, closing the door behind him, and Elena and Dante were alone. Well, Elena said after a moment. That was mortifying. Your father is intimidating, Dante agreed, moving closer. But not wrong. We do need to talk about how this works. Ground rules, no public displays of affection at work, Elena said immediately. We maintain professionalism in meetings. We don't let personal issues affect business decisions. Agreed. And we don't use work as an excuse to avoid dealing with personal issues, Dante added. If we have a fight, we address it directly, not through passive-aggressive policy memos. Elena smiled despite herself. Were those memos passive-aggressive? Brutally, Dante said, grinning. The one about unnecessary risk-taking was particularly pointed. You deserved it. That Brazilian deal was insane. It made us $12 million. It could have lost us 50. They stared at each other and then both started laughing, recognizing the pattern, the old familiar dance they'd done for 2 years. This is going to be interesting, Elena said. Working together and being together. Learning to disagree without it being warfare. I look forward to it, Dante said. I like when you challenge me, Elena. I always have. I just don't want to be your enemy while you do it. Partners, then? Elena offered her hand. Dante took it, but instead of shaking, he pulled her close, kissing her softly. Partners, he agreed against her lips. In everything. The rest of the day was a lesson in navigating new territory. In the morning executive meeting, they sat across from each other as always, but the dynamic was different. When Dante proposed an aggressive expansion into Southeast Asia, Elena didn't automatically oppose it. Instead, she asked thoughtful questions, challenged specific assumptions, and ultimately helped refine the strategy rather than tear it down. The other executives noticed. Some seemed pleased by the collaboration. Others looked vaguely disappointed that the entertainment of watching them fight was over. At lunch, Elena went to the cafeteria instead of eating at her desk, finding a quiet table by the window. She was halfway through her salad when Dante appeared, carrying his own tray. This seat taken? He asked with that half-smile that now made her heart skip instead of her blood boil. Depends, Elena said. Are you going to tell me everything I'm eating is wrong and I should try the pasta? The pasta is terrible here, Dante said, sitting down. I was actually going to suggest we find a real Italian place for dinner, somewhere I can feed you properly. That sounds suspiciously like a date. That's because it is a date. I told you, Elena. I'm not hiding this. Around them, Elena could feel the attention, the curious stares, the whispered speculation. Part of her wanted to retreat to the safety of her office, to avoid the gossip and judgment. But a larger part, the part that had spent the weekend discovering what it felt like to be truly seen and accepted, refused to hide. There's a place in Little Italy my grandmother loved, she said. Tiny, family-run, makes the best ossobuco you've ever tasted. Dante's face lit up. You're inviting me to your grandmother's restaurant? That's serious. Is that a problem? That's perfect, Dante said. I want to know all your favorite places. I want to learn your history, Elena. Not just the professional biography everyone knows, but the real story. The moments that made you who you are. They were interrupted by Marcus Chen from legal, who stopped by their table with barely concealed curiosity. Romano. Ferrara. Didn't expect to see you two sharing a meal. Usually, you're in separate corners plotting each other's destruction. People change, Marcus, Elena said evenly. Maybe we realized we're more effective working together than against each other. Is that what we're calling it? Marcus grinned. Look, I'm happy for you both. The tension between you two has been painful to watch. It's about time you figured it out. After he left, Dante raised an eyebrow. Well, that's going to be the story all over the office by end of day. Let it be, Elena said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. I'm tired of hiding. Tired of pretending. If people want to gossip, let them. We know the truth. Which is That we were idiots for 2 years. And we're not going to be idiots anymore. Dante reached across the table, lacing his fingers through hers in full view of the cafeteria. I like this version of us much better. The afternoon brought challenges. A crisis with a supplier that required Elena and Dante to work together in close quarters, testing their new dynamic under pressure. Old habits threatened to resurface. Elena caught herself about to snap at one of his suggestions, and Dante had to physically step back when he felt his frustration rising. But they caught themselves. Communicated instead of attacking. Found compromise instead of demanding surrender. By the time they resolved the issue, both were exhausted but oddly exhilarated. We did it, Elena said as they walked back to their offices. Worked together without killing each other. The bar is low, but we cleared it, Dante agreed. Then, lower. Come to my place tonight. After dinner. Stay over. I sleep better with you there. Dante, we can't spend every night together. People will definitely notice if I'm never at my apartment. Then I'll stay at yours. I don't care where we are, Elena. I just want to be with you. The vulnerability in his voice made Elena's chest tighten. This powerful, confident man was asking, not demanding, showing her exactly how much this meant to him. My place is smaller, she warned. Less impressive. I don't care about impressive, I care about you. They went to the restaurant in Little Italy that night, and Dante charmed the elderly owner by speaking flawless Italian, asking about the ingredients, complimenting the preparation with obvious expertise. Elena watched him engage with the staff, saw him in his element, and felt something shift deeper inside her. This was real. This man who made her laugh, who challenged her to be better, who looked at her like she was the most fascinating person in any room. This was actually happening. After dinner, they walked through the neighborhood hand in hand, and Dante told her stories about growing up in Milan, about Sunday dinners with extended family, about the warmth and chaos of Italian life that he missed desperately. Come with me, he said suddenly, to Milan, next month. I need to visit the European offices, and I want you to meet my family. See where I come from. That's a big step, Elena said carefully. Meeting the family. I know. But I'm sure about this, Elena. About us. I don't want to waste any more time pretending to be casual about something that isn't casual at all. Elena thought about it, about stepping fully into this relationship, about committing in ways that would make it real and public and impossible to take back. Okay, she said. I'll come to Milan. I want to meet your family. I want to see the city that made you who you are. Dante stopped walking, pulling her into his arms right there on the sidewalk. You're extraordinary, he said. Do you know that? You're brilliant and brave and so beautiful it physically hurts to look at you sometimes. Dante. Let me finish. You could have stayed safe. Could have kept hating me, because it was easier than risking this, but you didn't. You took a chance on me, on us, and I don't take that lightly. He kissed her then, deep and thorough, uncaring of who might see, and Elena kissed him back, pouring 2 years of denied feeling into it, claiming him as thoroughly as he was claiming her. They went back to Elena's apartment, a renovated loft in Chelsea that was 1/3 the size of Dante's penthouse but somehow more comfortable, more lived in. Dante explored it like an archaeologist uncovering secrets. The bookshelves crammed with poetry and philosophy, the desk where she worked on her own writing, the photographs of her grandmother, her parents, moments captured from a life fully lived. This is you, he said, running his fingers over the spines of her books. The real you that no one at the office gets to see. Not no one, Elena corrected, coming up behind him and wrapping her arms around his waist. Not anymore. They made love in Elena's bed, slower this time, learning each other's rhythms with more patience. Dante mapped her body with his hands and mouth, finding the places that made her gasp, that made her arch into his touch. Elena discovered he liked when she whispered his name, when she took control, when she showed him exactly what she wanted. Afterward, they lay tangled together, and Dante traced lazy patterns on her back. "Tell me something," he said. "Something you've never told anyone." Elena thought for a moment. "I wanted to be a writer, not a businesswoman. When I was younger, before I understood what being a Romano meant, I dreamed about writing novels, living in a cabin somewhere quiet, creating worlds instead of managing pharmaceutical divisions." "It's not too late," Dante said. "You could still do that." "The company." "The company will be fine," Dante interrupted. "Elena, you're brilliant at what you do, but if it's not what you love, if you're just doing it because it's expected, that's not living. That's existing." "Says the man who works 80-hour weeks," Elena pointed out. "I work that much because I have nothing else," Dante said. "But now I do. Now I have you. And I'm realizing that maybe success isn't about how many deals you close or how much money you make. Maybe it's about building a life that feels full." Elena turned to face him. "Are you saying you'd support me if I wanted to step back from the company? I'm saying I'd support whatever makes you happy. If that's running the American division, great. If it's writing novels in a cabin in Maine, also great. As long as I get to be there with you, I don't care what form it takes." "You don't even like the country," Elena said, but she was smiling. "I like you," Dante corrected. "Everything else is negotiable." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and Elena dreamed of possibilities she'd never let herself imagine before. The weeks that followed established a new rhythm. They were careful at work, professional and focused, but everyone knew. The gossip died down eventually, replaced by grudging acceptance that the Ice Queen and the Italian Shark were somehow making it work. They had their first real fight 3 weeks in, over a policy decision that Elena thought was too aggressive and Dante thought was necessary. It escalated quickly, old patterns threatening to resurface, voices rising in Elena's office until they were both saying things designed to hurt. But this time, when Elena turned to walk away, to retreat into cold silence the way she always had before, Dante caught her hand. "No," he said. "We don't do that anymore. We don't fight dirty and then ignore each other. We work this out." "I don't want to work it out," Elena snapped. "I want you to admit I'm right, and I want you to admit that sometimes playing it safe means missing opportunities," Dante shot back. "But we're both too stubborn for that, so how about we find a compromise instead?" They spent 2 hours hammering out a solution that incorporated elements of both their approaches. It was exhausting and frustrating, and when they finally reached agreement, Elena realized she was exhilarated in a way she hadn't been during their old fights. Because this time, they were fighting for the same goal, not against each other. "This is better," she said as they reviewed the final proposal. "What we came up with together is better than either plan alone. That's because we balance each other," Dante said. "Your caution grounds my risk-taking. My boldness pushes your creativity. We make each other better, Elena. That's what partners do." The trip to Milan came in October, and Elena was more nervous than she'd been for any board presentation. Meeting Dante's family felt monumental, a step that would make this relationship undeniably real. Dante's mother, Francesca, was a force of nature, tiny, elegant, with sharp eyes that saw everything, and a warmth that immediately put Elena at ease. His father, Antonio, was quieter but no less intimidating. A retired professor who asked Elena thoughtful questions about her work, her ambitions, her intentions toward his son. "He's happier," Francesca said to Elena during a moment alone in the kitchen while preparing Sunday dinner. "I haven't seen Dante this light in years. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." "I'm not doing anything except being myself," Elena said. "Exactly," Francesca replied with a knowing smile. "That's all he needed. Someone who sees him, really sees him. Not just the success or the money or the charming exterior. You see my son's heart." The week in Milan was a revelation. Elena saw Dante with his family. Saw the man he was when he wasn't performing for the corporate world. He was playful with his younger sister, respectful with his parents, passionate about his city. He took Elena to his favorite spots. Tiny cafes where he'd studied in university, the church where he'd been baptized, the park where he'd had his first kiss. "I want you to know all of me," he said as they walked along the Naviglio Grande at sunset. "The American Dante is just one version. This is where I come from. These streets, this culture, this language. It's all part of who I am." "I love this version of you," Elena said. "Actually, I love all versions of you. The boardroom warrior, the Italian son, the man who makes me coffee in the morning, all of it." Dante stopped walking, turning to face her fully. The sunset painted the canal in shades of gold and rose, and Elena thought she'd never seen anything more beautiful than this moment. "I love you," Dante said. "I know it's fast. I know we've only been really together for a few months. But I've loved you for 2 years, Elena. I loved you when I thought you hated me. I loved you through every argument and every fight. And now that I get to actually be with you, that love has only grown stronger." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "I love you too. I think I've loved you since that first dance, when you made me see everything differently. When you showed me that what I thought was hatred was just love wearing a disguise." They kissed there on the canal walk, and Elena felt something settle deep in her bones. This was home. Not New York or Milan, not any specific place, but Dante. Wherever he was, that was where she belonged. Back in New York, they settled into a life that felt both ordinary and extraordinary. Dinners together most nights, either cooking in Elena's loft or Dante's penthouse. Weekend trips exploring the city or escaping to the quiet of the countryside. Nights tangled together, talking until dawn about everything and nothing. Elena started writing again. Not just poetry, but actual prose, stories that had been living in her head for years finally making their way onto the page. Dante read everything she wrote, offering thoughtful feedback that made her work better. He became her first reader, her most honest critic, her biggest champion. "You're really good at this," he said one night, reading through a chapter of her first attempt at a novel. "Like, publishable good. You should take this seriously." "I am taking it seriously," Elena said. "But I can't exactly quit my job to be a writer." "Why not?" Dante set down the pages, giving her his full attention. "I'm serious, Elena. Why not? We have more than enough money. You've proven yourself at the company 1,000 times over. If this is what makes you happy, what makes you come alive, why wouldn't you pursue it? Because it's irresponsible. Because I have obligations. Because you're scared," Dante interrupted gently. "You're scared of wanting something just for yourself, of choosing passion over duty. But here's what I've learned from loving you. The passionate version of Elena is worth any risk." Elena felt something crack open inside her chest. "You really think I could do it? Really make a go of writing?" "I think you can do anything you set your mind to," Dante said. "I've watched you transform a company, negotiate impossible deals, command boardrooms full of people who underestimated you. Writing a novel? That's nothing compared to what you've already conquered." It took 3 more months of soul-searching, of long conversations with her father, of weighing duty against desire. But eventually, Elena made the decision. She would step back from her day-to-day role at Romano Pharmaceuticals, keeping a board seat but handing over operational control. She would write. Roberto, surprisingly, was supportive. "I've watched you your whole life trying to be what you thought I wanted," he said. "But what I've always wanted is for you to be happy. If writing does that, then write. The company will survive without you running it. I'm not sure you'll survive if you don't give this dream a real chance." On her last official day in the office, Elena stood in the boardroom looking out at the city. Dante came to find her there. "Having second thoughts?" he asked. Terrified thoughts, Elena corrected. What if I'm not good enough? What if I fail? Then you fail, Dante said simply. And you'll survive it because you're Elena Romano. And you've survived everything else life has thrown at you. But Elena, what if you succeed? What if you write something beautiful that touches people's lives? Isn't that worth the risk? When did you become the voice of reason? Elena asked, leaning into his embrace. When I fell in love with someone who taught me that taking emotional risks is just as important as taking business risks, Dante replied. You've changed me, Elena. Made me braver in ways that have nothing to do with money or deals. Let me give that back to you. They left the office together that evening, hand in hand, stepping into an unknown future that felt both terrifying and full of possibility. Elena wrote. For 6 months she poured herself into her novel, discovering that the discipline she'd learned in business translated well to writing. Dante supported her completely, reading drafts, bringing her coffee, pulling her away from the keyboard when she worked too long. You're good at this, Elena said one night, watching him cook dinner while she took a break from writing. At what? Being a partner, supporting my dreams. Not everyone would be so generous. That's because most people see relationships as competition, Dante said, plating pasta with practiced ease. But we learned the hard way that competing with each other only made us both miserable. This is better. Building each other up, celebrating each other's successes, being each other's safety net. When did you get so wise? Elena teased. When I stopped being threatened by your strength and started appreciating it, Dante replied. Her novel sold in a modest deal to a respected publisher. Nothing huge, nothing that would change the world, but it was hers, real. A dream made tangible. The day the deal closed, Dante took her to the same wine bar where they'd had their first real conversation. I'm proud of you, he said, raising his glass. Not because you sold a book, though that's amazing, but because you bet on yourself. You chose what made you happy over what was expected. That takes courage. I learned it from you, Elena said. You showed me that the biggest risks sometimes have the biggest rewards. Speaking of risks, Dante said, and suddenly he was sliding out of his chair, kneeling beside the table. Elena's breath caught as Dante pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. What are you, Elena Romano? Dante said, his voice steady but his hands trembling slightly. 2 years ago, I made you dance with me at a gala, and you looked at me like you wanted to murder me. I thought it was hatred. Turned out it was something else entirely. Something I'd been too stupid to recognize because I'd never felt it before. He opened the box, revealing a ring that was simple and elegant. A sapphire the exact color of the dress she'd worn that first night, surrounded by diamonds that caught the candlelight. You've taught me that love isn't about winning or losing. It's not a competition or a battle. It's a choice we make every single day to show up for each other, to support each other's dreams, to be brave enough to be vulnerable together. You've made me a better man, Elena, not because you changed me, but because you saw who I really was, and loved me anyway. Tears were streaming down Elena's face now, and she didn't bother to wipe them away. I don't want to spend another day without knowing you're mine and I'm yours. Officially. Completely. Forever. Elena, will you marry me? Elena slid off her chair, kneeling to face him, her hands cupping his face. Yes, she whispered. Yes. 1,000 times yes. I'll marry you, Dante Ferrara. I'll spend the rest of my life loving you, challenging you, supporting you, and probably still arguing with you about strategy. Dante laughed through his own tears, sliding the ring onto her finger with shaking hands. I wouldn't want it any other way. The arguments are half the fun. They kissed there on the floor of the wine bar while the other patrons applauded, and Elena felt the last piece of her carefully constructed armor fall away. She was completely vulnerable, completely exposed, completely in love, and for the first time in her life, that didn't terrify her. They married 6 months later in a small ceremony in Milan, with just their families and closest friends. Elena wore a simple white dress, and Dante couldn't stop crying when he saw her walk down the aisle. "You're such a romantic," she teased during their first dance as husband and wife. "Only for you," Dante replied, holding her close. "Only ever for you." As they swayed together, Elena thought about that first dance, the hatred she'd felt that had really been attraction, the anger that had masked desire, the 2 years of fighting that had really been an elaborate courtship neither of them had recognized. "What are you thinking?" Dante asked, because he could always tell when her mind was working. "That we took the long way around," Elena said. "That we wasted 2 years being idiots when we could have been happy. Or maybe," Dante said, spinning her gently, "we needed those 2 years, needed to learn who we were separately before we could be together. Needed all that conflict to appreciate the peace we have now. Always finding the silver lining," Elena said. "Always choosing to see our story as something beautiful instead of something broken." "Because it is beautiful," Dante insisted. "It's messy and complicated and we fought like hell to get here. But that makes it real, Elena. That makes it ours." They built a life together that honored both their ambitions. Dante continued running the European division remotely, traveling to Milan regularly while basing himself in New York with Elena. She published 2 more novels, each one more successful than the last. Finding her voice as a writer and loving every challenging moment of it, they bought a house in Maine, the quiet space Elena had always dreamed of, and spent summers there writing and cooking and living simply. They fought still, because they were both passionate people with strong opinions, but they fought fair now. They fought to understand, not to win. They never used their love as a weapon or their vulnerabilities as ammunition. 3 years into their marriage, when Elena's 3rd novel hit the bestseller list and Dante's division posted record profits, they celebrated alone in their main house, drinking wine on the porch as the sun set over the ocean. "We did it," Elena said, leaning against his shoulder. "Built the life we wanted. Together. Best decision I ever made," Dante said, kissing the top of her head. "Challenging you to that dance. Best decision I ever made, saying yes even though I thought I hated you." "You never hated me," Dante said with absolute certainty. "No," Elena agreed, smiling. "I never did. I just loved you in a language I didn't understand yet." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn from gold to pink to purple, and Elena thought about how far they'd come. From enemies to lovers to partners to forever. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me. For not letting me push you away. For being patient while I figured out that what I felt for you wasn't hatred at all. For loving me enough to fight for us, even when I was fighting against us." Dante turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "Elena, you were always worth fighting for. From that very first moment I saw you in a boardroom, brilliant and fierce and absolutely terrifying, I knew you were someone extraordinary. It just took me 2 years to figure out how to tell you, and it took me 2 years to let myself hear it," Elena replied. "We're both stubborn idiots." "But we're stubborn idiots together," Dante said. "And that makes all the difference." They kissed as the last light faded from the sky. 2 people who had found each other despite every obstacle, including themselves. Who had transformed hatred into love, conflict into partnership, and loneliness into belonging. Sometimes the greatest love stories begin with misunderstanding. With seeing someone as an enemy when they're really your missing piece. Elena and Deborah never found perfect love, but they found real love. The kind that's tested by fire and comes out stronger. The kind that chooses to stay even when leaving would be easier. The kind that proves being seen, truly seen, is the greatest gift one person can give another. And maybe their story speaks to all of us, reminding us that the line between love and hate is often just fear in disguise, that taking emotional risks can be scarier than any business gamble but infinitely more rewarding. That sometimes the person we're fighting hardest against is exactly the person we need most. If this story touched your heart, Subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and become a member to get early access to upcoming stories. And if you felt it was really worth listening to, also click the super thanks button. Your gesture makes all the difference and helps us continue bringing narratives that move hearts.